ضبط ضعوف.
זה בית ששיפצתי לפני חודשיים והזכרתי אותו.
A major change has occurred in the Middle East again. The United States and Israel launched airstrike that hit Iran's nuclear facilities. But what shocked the world the most was not the attack itself, but Iran's response that came afterward, a major U.S. military base in Qatar has been targeted for the first time by Iranian ballistic missiles. This attack was no ordinary incident. It was a direct response to the involvement of U.S. B-2 stealth bombers and attacks on Iranian nuclear facilities. Iran did not stop there. While the world debated the legality of U.S. military action, other missiles were launched into the heart of Israel, including Tel Aviv. The question now is whether this was just a limited retaliation or the beginning of something much bigger. Here is a complete and verified report on Iran's response, the military escalation in the region, and the strong reactions from countries around the world. Don't miss a single detail. It didn't take long for Iran to respond diplomatically. There was no protest in the Security Council. All they sent was one thing: hundreds of missiles and combat drones attacking U.S. military bases in Qatar. In response to the B-2 attack, Iran chose a more measured but firm military path. Iran launched several ballistic missiles towards the Udeid airbase in Qatar, which is the main U.S. military base in the Middle East. The missiles were intercepted by Qatari air defense systems and U.S. forces. No casualties or major damage were reported. However, the strategic significance of this attack is clear. This is the first time Iran has directly targeted a U.S. military facility in the region in response to a direct attack the Iranian government called the Move a Proportional Warning against the aggression initiated by the U.S. before attacking the U.S. military base in Qatar. Iran also turned out to openly attack major Israeli cities. Tel Aviv, the urban heart and military center of Israel, became one of the main targets the explosion occurred. In the area near the IDF military logistics headquarters, flames soared. Reports from the field said several buildings were destroyed and communication signals were temporarily paralyzed. Iranballistic missiles hit Soroka Medical Center hospital, sparking panic among patients and medical personnel. Some of the hospital buildings where damaged patients were moved to emergency underground shelters. Haifa and Kiryat Gardware hit energy and industrial facilities. Electricity was cut off. Industrial activity. And for the first time in more than a decade, Israelis felt that their country's defenses could be penetrated. Not only military areas, civilian areas such as Batam Ramat Afif shopping centers on the outskirts of Tel Aviv were also affected. Casualties could not be avoided. At least 24 people died, mostly civilians. More than 2,500 people were injured, ranging from light to severe. Dozens of buildings were damaged. Deserted streets. Residents took refuge in shelters, and the Israeli sky was filled with sirens and clouds of Asiran. In the midst of this wave of attacks, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, made an open statement: "We will not remain silent. Every loss we suffer will be paid by our enemies at full price." Iran called this attack a stern warning to Israel and America that Iran can not only talk but can retaliate more than that. Iran wants to show the world that they are able to fight even openly. Meanwhile, the world is starting to worry. The UN and the European Union are calling for de-escalation. China and Russia have condemned America's initial attack and stated that Iran has the right to retaliate. America and Britain stand behind Israel but call for control of the situation. Gulf countries such as Oman, the UAE and Kuwait are worried that this attack could spread to oil routes and trigger economic instability in the region. Tensions are also rising in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has signaled that it will block the world's main oil shipping route if conflict is not stopped immediately. Now the world is facing two possibilities. The first conflict could escalate and involve surrounding countries and even potentially trigger a regional war or second international pressure to stop the attacks and force all parties back to the diplomatic table. But after blood was spilled and cities were hit, diplomacy was no longer an easy option. Attacking two major Israeli targets and a U.S. military base in Qatar, Iran showed that its response to the U.S. B-2 attacks was not merely symbolic. Although most of the missiles were intercepted, Iran's strategic message was clear. They would not sit idly by when their territory and strategic facilities were attacked. The world now faces a new dilemma in the Middle East where any military action could trigger a much larger chain of retaliation. This video is presented for educational and informational purposes based on facts and balanced analysis. We do not promote hate, violence, or hate speech against any group. This content respects YouTube's policy on hate speech, violent and provocative content, and misleading information. References YouTube's policies and related laws, YouTube community guidelines, Indonesian electronic information and transactions law, and the International Convention on Human Rights.